The lights of America's Got Talent blazed brighter than anything he had ever seen. For a moment, the 15-year-old Filipino boy just stood there, frozen, staring into the sea of faces. His white Elvis-style suit shimmered softly under the stage glow, every gold trim reflecting his trembling hands. Around his neck, a small silver microphone pendant, the only thing he had left from his father, swung gently as he breathed in, trying to calm his racing heart. He wasn't just here to sing, he was here to finish something his father had started. Back home in a small town in the Philippines, he used to sit beside his father every night as old Elvis Presley songs played from a cracked radio. His father would smile and say one day, "Son, you'll sing on a big stage. Bigger than this world can imagine." Those words echoed now in his mind, louder than the thousands of people in the AGT audience. But dreams are heavier when they're built from loss. His father had passed away just a year ago, leaving behind only memories, and that pendant. Every time he touched it, it reminded him why he was here. The crowd watched in silence. Sophia leaned forward. Howie smiled reassuringly. Heidi gave a gentle nod, but Simon's eyes stayed sharp, unreadable, as if he could see every fear behind the boy's smile. He gripped the microphone tightly and whispered, almost to himself, "This is for you, Papa." The music started. The first few notes of "Can't Help Falling in Love" filled the air. His voice came out soft, shaking slightly but pure. The hall echoed with his fragile tone. For a brief second it felt like time had stopped. Every second on that stage stretched into eternity. The judges exchanged glances. The boy's heart pounded harder with every lyric, each word carrying the weight of love, memory, and the ache of being far from home. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, unaware that in just 10 seconds Simon Cowell was about to raise his hand and change everything. 10 seconds, that's all it took. The young Filipino Elvis had barely begun to pour his heart into the song when Simon Cowell slowly lifted his hand, signaling the sound crew to stop the music. The melody died mid-note. The crowd gasped, the sudden silence hitting like a thunderclap. The boy froze, his lips parted, but no words came out. His small fingers still clutched the microphone tightly, his knuckles pale under the lights. He didn't understand. Had he already failed? Simon leaned forward, his face calm but serious. The other judges looked uncertain. Sophia's eyebrows furrowed. She looked almost protective. Howie crossed his arms, curious. Heidi glanced at the audience, sensing their growing unease. The boy's heart sank. All the dreams he'd carried from the Philippines, the long nights practicing Elvis songs in front of a mirror, the sacrifices his mother made just to get him here, flashed before his eyes in an instant. Simon finally spoke. His voice was steady, not cruel, but heavy with honesty. "You've got a beautiful tone," he said. "But right now you're holding back. You're not feeling the song, you're thinking about it." The audience murmured. The boy's eyes flickered, his throat tightening. He felt the sting of tears threatening to escape. Simon continued softly. Elvis sang with emotion. He lived his words. "If you want to honor him and your father, then sing like it matters." The entire room went quiet again. The boy blinked away his tears and looked down at the microphone pendant hanging from his neck. His father's pendant. He ran his thumb over it gently. That was the reminder he needed. He nodded slightly, taking a deep breath. The trembling in his hands slowed, his shoulders straightened. For the first time his eyes lifted, not with fear, but with resolve. Simon gave a small, almost invisible smile and motioned to the sound booth. "Let's try that again," he said. The lights dimmed slightly. The music started once more, and this time something inside him changed. The boy closed his eyes, lifted his head, and began to sing like his soul was on fire. The music began again, slow, delicate, filled with promise. But this time, the boy didn't rush. He stood still for a moment, eyes closed, as if speaking to someone only he could see. The crowd held its breath. Every heartbeat in the theater seemed to echo in the silence before his first note. Then he sang. The difference was instant. Gone was the trembling voice of a nervous teenager. What came out now was raw, powerful, filled with love, grief, and strength. His tone carried the ache of every lonely night he spent singing to the stars back home, pretending his father could still hear him. The first line floated through the air like a prayer. "Wise men say only fools rush in." Simon's expression softened. He leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the stage. Sophia pressed a hand to her chest, whispering, "Oh my God," under her breath. The audience sat frozen, caught between disbelief and awe. The boy wasn't just performing, he was living the song. Every word seemed to come straight from his heart. His voice quivered slightly, not from fear but from emotion. When he hit the chorus, his tone rose with breathtaking control, rich and soulful, a sound far too mature for his age. Images flashed across his mind: his father's smile, their tiny living room in the Philippines, the smell of fried rice from his mother's kitchen, and the old radio that played Elvis on endless repeat. He wasn't on stage anymore, he was home. Simon glanced at Sophia and nodded slightly, a rare moment of quiet respect. The crowd began to sway, some wiping tears. Heidi whispered, "He's channeling something bigger than himself." The boy opened his eyes and lifted his gaze toward the ceiling. One last note, pure, golden, unbroken, soared through the hall, echoing long after the music stopped. When the final chord faded, silence filled the room once again. But it wasn't the silence of doubt this time, it was the silence of awe. Simon didn't move. The boy exhaled shakily, his eyes wet. He had done it. In one moment, he turned rejection into redemption, and the stage into a sacred space. The theater had changed. Moments ago, it was just another America's Got Talent audition. Now, it felt like a concert, a spiritual experience. As the Filipino Elvis sang his heart out, something powerful began to unfold. His voice carried through every corner of the hall, rich and trembling with emotion. Each note wasn't just heard, it was felt. He sang like someone who had waited his whole life for this one chance. The quiver in his tone had vanished, replaced by conviction. He wasn't performing for fame or approval. He was singing for his father, for his family watching from thousands of miles away, for every Filipino kid who ever dreamed big from a small place. The audience began to rise one by one. A quiet murmur of awe turned into a wave of cheers. Phones lifted into the air, recording what was becoming an unforgettable moment. Simon's expression softened in a way the world rarely sees. He leaned forward, elbows on the desk, completely lost in the boy's voice. Sophia's eyes glistened with tears. Heidi pressed a hand over her heart. Howie mouthed the word, "Whoa." Then came the bridge, the most emotional part of the song. The boy tilted his head slightly toward the sky, his voice cracking just enough to sound heartbreakingly real. "Take my hand, take my whole life too." It was no longer just a song. It was a message. A goodbye, a thank you, a promise to a father who could no longer stand in the audience, but who surely was listening somewhere beyond. The crowd stood now, applauding through tears, urging him to keep going. His mother, backstage, clutched her hands together and sobbed quietly, whispering prayers of pride and gratitude. As the final chorus echoed through the hall, lights shimmered softly around him, gold warm, almost heavenly. His young face glowed with emotion, tears tracing down his cheeks, but he didn't stop singing. And when the last note fell into silence, the sound that followed was explosive. Thunderous applause, whistles, and cheers that shook the room. Simon Cowell, the man who had stopped him 10 seconds in, was now standing, and for the first time that night Simon was speechless. For a heartbeat, the entire theater stood still. The last note lingered in the air, delicate, trembling, like the echo of something sacred. Then, suddenly the room erupted. The crowd rose to its feet in a wave of thunderous applause. People were crying, cheering, whistling. The sound was deafening, but beneath it all, the boy just stood there, frozen, chest heaving, eyes shining with tears that finally fell freely. He bowed deeply, both hands clutching the microphone as if it were his lifeline. When he looked up, his eyes met Simon Cowell's, and what he saw made his breath catch. Simon was standing. For a long moment, Simon said nothing. He just looked at the boy, his face soft, almost emotional. Then he nodded slowly and smiled, the kind of smile that said, "You proved me wrong." The audience went wild again. Sophia clapped through her tears, shaking her head in disbelief. "That was one of the most beautiful performances I've ever seen," she said. Heidi leaned forward, her voice trembling. "You didn't just sing, you made us feel every word." Howie added warmly, "You came here as a boy dressed like Elvis, but you leave this stage as an artist." The boy covered his mouth, overwhelmed. He looked toward the audience, searching, and there, in the dark beyond the lights, he imagined his father standing, smiling proudly just as he always did during their late-night karaoke sessions. Simon finally spoke. His tone was calm, sincere, and full of respect. "I stopped you earlier because I knew there was something special hiding inside you, and tonight, you found it. That was extraordinary." The boy's lips trembled as he whispered, "Thank you, sir." The crowd began chanting, "Golden buzzer, golden buzzer." Simon smiled, exchanging a glance with Sophia, and then, slowly, he reached for the button. The music swelled, golden confetti exploded from above, and the Filipino Elvis fell to his knees, crying, laughing, shaking all at once. The stage that once felt like a place of judgment had become a home of triumph. That night the world didn't just witness a performance, they witnessed a legacy reborn.